Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a dramatic and fast-moving story that's sending shockwaves through Russia and far beyond its borders as reports emerge of growing unrest in St. Petersburg and signs that the Kremlin's grip may be under unprecedented strain. What we're seeing right now is not a single protest or an isolated incident. It's a pattern of defiance, frustration, and fear that appears to be spreading through one of Russia's most important cities. St. Petersburg has always held symbolic weight, and what happens there often echoes across the country. Over the past weeks, streets that were once tightly controlled have begun to show cracks in that control. Small gatherings have turned into larger crowds, and whispers of dissent have grown louder despite heavy surveillance. For a system built on fear and obedience, even small acts of resistance carry enormous meaning. At the heart of this tension is growing anger toward Vladimir Putin and the ongoing consequences of the war. Many Russians are feeling the economic pressure, the personal losses, and the isolation from the outside world. What once felt distant is now painfully close to home. One of the most striking elements of this moment is the reported flight of so-called volunteers. These are individuals who were encouraged, pressured, or incentivized to support the war effort. Now many of them appear to be disappearing from the streets, the offices, and even the country itself. The term volunteer has always been controversial in this context. For some, it meant money and survival. For others, it meant avoiding harsher consequences. But as realities on the ground became clearer, enthusiasm quickly turned into fear. Accounts suggest that many of these volunteers are now trying to evade further involvement. Some are allegedly fleeing to rural areas, others attempting to cross borders, and some simply refusing to respond to official summons. This quiet retreat speaks volumes. When those meant to bolster the system begin to run from it, that's a serious warning sign. It suggests not just dissatisfaction, but a loss of belief in the promises made by those in power. Fear can motivate people only for so long. In St. Petersburg, the mood on the streets reflects this shift. People are reportedly more willing to talk, more willing to question, and more willing to show frustration in public. While still cautious, the silence that once dominated daily life is breaking. This is not happening in a vacuum. Families are grieving lost sons and brothers. Workers are struggling with inflation and shrinking opportunities. Young people see futures closing rather than opening. All of this feeds resentment. The Russian government has responded in its usual way, with increased police presence and harsher warnings. Yet repression, while effective in the short term, often deepens long-term resistance. Every crackdown plants seeds of future anger. St. Petersburg's history makes this especially significant. The city has long been associated with cultural influence, intellectual movements, and political change. It's a place where ideas spread quickly, even under strict control. Social media, despite censorship, continues to play a role. Videos, messages, and first-hand accounts leak out, offering glimpses of what's really happening. Even when platforms are restricted, information finds a way. The image being projected by state media contrasts sharply with what residents describe. Official narratives speak of unity and resolve, while people on the ground report exhaustion and quiet rebellion. This gap between reality and propaganda is growing wider. Economic strain is another major factor driving unrest. Sanctions, reduced trade, and declining wages have made everyday life harder. When basic stability is threatened, loyalty to leadership weakens. Small businesses in cities like St. Petersburg are reportedly closing or barely surviving. Imported goods are scarce or overpriced. Even those who once supported the government now question whether the cost is worth it. The departure of volunteers adds another layer to this crisis. These individuals were meant to symbolize patriotic support. Their disappearance undermines the image of national unity the Kremlin works so hard to maintain. Fear of being sent to the front lines has become a powerful motivator. Stories of poor equipment, inadequate training, and heavy losses circulate widely. Once fear outweighs loyalty, compliance collapses. Families play a crucial role in this dynamic. Parents urge sons to hide. Partners beg loved ones not to report for duty. These private decisions collectively shape public outcomes. Authorities attempt to counter this by tightening controls and issuing harsher penalties. But enforcement becomes harder when resistance is widespread and subtle rather than openly confrontational. In St. Petersburg, even simple acts like refusing to display patriotic symbols or quietly avoiding state events can signal dissent. These acts may seem small, but together they erode the foundation of enforced loyalty. International observers are watching closely. Any instability in a city of this size and importance has implications far beyond Russia's borders. Markets, diplomatic strategies, and security assessments all react to such signals. For Putin's government, the challenge is maintaining authority without revealing weakness. Every visible crackdown risks international condemnation and domestic backlash. Every concession risks emboldening opposition. The situation becomes a balancing act, and history shows that such balances are fragile. Once momentum shifts toward resistance, it can accelerate quickly and unpredictably. Many Russians are not calling for revolution, at least not openly. What they want is safety, dignity, and a future that doesn't involve endless sacrifice. When those basic desires are unmet, loyalty erodes naturally. St. Petersburg's unrest may represent just the beginning. Similar pressures exist in other cities and regions. The difference is visibility and influence. The Kremlin's reliance on fear, control, and loyalty narratives faces its toughest test when people simply stop believing. Belief cannot be forced indefinitely. As volunteers flee and streets grow restless, the image of an unshakable regime starts to crack. Even if the system holds for now, the damage to its authority may be lasting. This moment highlights a broader truth about power. It relies not only on force, but on consent, even if that consent is reluctant. When consent disappears, force becomes increasingly costly. The coming weeks and months will be critical. The government may regain control, or it may face deeper resistance. Much depends on how far people are willing to go and how harshly the state responds. For now, St. Petersburg stands as a warning sign. A city once synonymous with stability now reflects uncertainty and tension. That alone marks a significant shift. As stories continue to emerge, it becomes clear that the narrative of unwavering support no longer holds. Beneath the surface, fear, anger, and disillusionment are reshaping the country. Whether this leads to major change or a renewed crackdown remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the streets of St. Petersburg are telling a story the Kremlin cannot fully control. And as volunteers flee and voices grow louder, that story is reaching far beyond Russia's borders, forcing the world to reconsider what stability really looks like inside Putin's Russia.